that's if one of the candidates just goes on and on and on. So I'd like to welcome you to the Ottawa-West-Nepean All Candidates Forum. We've been organized by the Bel-Air Community Association, but with the support of Carlington Community Association, Carlingwood, Centrepoint, City View Community Association, Crestview Meadowlands, Fisher Heights, Labour Park, Henson Park, and Whitehaven. And I better keep this up here. I just wanted to briefly go over how the evening will be proceeding. At this point, if you had a question and you haven't already turned it in, you should. There have been people going up and down the aisles because once we get started, we're no longer taking the paper questions. The evening will start with initial statements by the candidates and followed by questions put by the community associations, no more than one each, and followed by the questions that have come through that you've submitted this evening. There's one change to what you may have seen in an advertisement. We were originally planning on having Joanne Canello as our moderator. She has been otherwise occupied now with the story she's working on with CBC, so she's kindly provided for us that our new moderator, which is Lawrence Wall, who's also a CBC. You probably heard Lawrence on the newscasts on CBC Radio 1. We, as I say, starting off with 2 minutes from the candidates, then 1 minute for questions, and you may have directed a question at a specific candidate, in which case it'll start with them, but each of the candidates will get the opportunity to respond. The order is going to rotate. The order of speaking has been determined by lots, which are just drawn right now by the candidates. And I won't keep you going any longer. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lawrence Wall.
Thank you very much, Morley. I guess this mic is working a little better now. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Great. I'm not used to talking to microphones, so this is just something that's brand new for me. I am delighted to be here tonight. I hope you're not too terribly disappointed that Joanne couldn't make it. She is otherwise engaged with a story you may have seen or heard about a certain city councillor who may or may not have an office right in this very building. And in fact, right after the All Candidates meeting tonight, you can go home and watch the National tonight to see exactly what she was working on. I want to thank the 10 community associations for getting together and sponsoring this event. It really is a wonderful opportunity to see democracy in action. And thank you for coming out tonight on a somewhat rainy, iffy kind of evening. You are showing that you feel that this is an important event, it's something that's worth attending. You've heard the rules from Morley, and you know that we have a certain format that's been worked out. I'm going to stick to that format as closely as possible. Our beloved timekeeper here will be taking a very careful measurement of the time that is allotted to the candidates, and when a candidate is nearing the end of his or her opening or answer, a yellow card will go up like this, just like in soccer. After that, when the candidate's time is up, a red card will go up, and the candidate will be escorted off the pitch. And will no longer be able to, of course, I'm just kidding that. This event is being videotaped, so if any of you are in witness protection, you might want to make note of that right now. Later on tonight, you'll probably see my colleague Julie Ireton with a camera operator. She is here collecting some visuals for a story that she's working on. So without further ado, let us begin. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our candidates. We'll begin with opening statements, and just minutes ago, the candidates chose the order in which they're going to be speaking. And I've cleverly hidden. There we go. The first candidate representing the Green Party, Dave Stivvy. Dave, you have 2 minutes starting now.
Thank you, Lawrence, for the introduction, and thank all of you for taking the time to come here tonight to learn about your candidates. Somewhat of an interesting choice today. I'm a teacher, and today we are having our annual talent show, and my option was to either lip sync Posh Spice or come here to introduce myself to the riding associations here tonight. So it's a pretty easy decision. So thank you for scheduling it on this date. So who am I? Well, my name is David Stivvy, and I'm here as a candidate for the Green Party. I'm a dedicated teacher, and I'm actively teaching right now. I'm also a successful local business entrepreneur. I started a tourism company in Ottawa City Rafting 6 years ago that has been a success in my own community of Britannia. And I'm a respected outdoor industry professional, and I truly have a passion for connecting people to nature. That is what brings me here today. And really, that transfer of my passion has been my understanding of climate change. I've personally seen it happening over the years, and as a teacher, my students have really brought it to life for me that, they are scared for their future. So, and in Ottawa, we are experiencing it. We've had flooding, tornadoes, drought, all in the same year. Climate change is here. And I honestly believe our party, the Green Party, is truly the only party that really thinks of this as a crisis and is willing to address this all in. I'm also here because I care about my community. I'm a talker. I spend a lot of time in dog parks. I walk my community regularly. And talking to people when I've been knocking on doors, I've really found out that there are many concerns. It's not just about the economy. There are people here that are concerned about the opioid crisis that have been personally affected. There are people here concerned about assisted dying laws. There are people here concerned about the economy. So I am representing the Green Party because I truly believe that Elizabeth May, experience, dedication, and integrity is really going to bring us to where we need to be with our next parliament.
Thank you, Dave. Representing the People's Party, please welcome Serge Gevorkian.
Thank you, Lawrence, and thanks to everyone for coming. I guess I should just begin with an introduction about myself. I was born in Moscow, Russia, in an Armenian family. So I was living through the collapse of the Soviet Union. I was 6 years old when the Soviet Union collapsed. That was 1991. In 2002, with my family, we moved to Canada. Myself, two brothers, my father, my mother. And I'm glad that my father made this choice to come to Canada. I think this is the biggest investment we've done. It was very difficult for my parents because they didn't speak any English or French. It's not easy to move when you're over 40, but they moved here to give the best opportunities to their kids, myself and my brothers. When I moved to Canada, I started my studies at the CEGEP college. I went to university. I got my master's degree. Also, I competed in Olympic wrestling. I was actually in the Canadian national team, and I'm glad that I was part of it because I got to travel. I traveled all the way from BC to Nova Scotia. I've been pretty much everywhere, in more places than any Canadian has been. And I value this country for its freedom of speech, for its freedom of expression, for its healthcare, for a lot of other beautiful things that we have. And I joined this party because I would like to preserve those values and those beautiful things that we have. I think it's a privilege to live in Canada. And I think it's very important to preserve all that. I joined the PPC because Maxime Bernier has been firm in his beliefs. He hasn't been changing his beliefs like a lot of other candidates and leaders did throughout the last 15 years. I think that the establishment and the global establishment have hijacked a lot of our politics and many of the parties. So I'm here to just make the best out of it. I'm here to spread the message. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representing the NPP, please welcome Angela McEwen.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Angela McEwen, and I'm the new Democratic Party candidate here in Ottawa-West-Nepean. I'm an economist with the Canadian Union of Public Employees, where I work on issues like climate change, tax fairness, and pensions. I'm also a mom to an 11-year-old girl, Anna, and my daughter is deeply worried about her future. Whenever she hears about the IPCC report that we only have 11 years left to reverse climate change, her eyes well up with tears. She thinks that it's not fair that before she's even an adult, the rest of us, adults now, will have screwed things up so badly that it will be irreversible. And it makes her mad that her government has utterly failed to do anything so far. The Conservatives set completely inadequate targets for emissions reductions and then failed to do anything about them. The Liberals came to power, they kept those same Conservative targets, and not only are they failing to meet them, they bought a pipeline. And when my daughter looks at me and asks what I'm doing to save the planet, I can't say nothing. Especially as an economist that works with the Green Economy Network, because I know that there are many things that we can be doing to fight climate change. And I know that we can do these things without sacrificing Canadian workers. I knew I had to get involved in this election and fight for the comprehensive climate change action plan that the new Democratic Party has put forward. I also know, as an economist, that if the only thing we focus on is climate change, then we're failing to address the challenges that confront residents in Ottawa-West-Nepean on a daily basis. Issues like growing inequality, the cost of housing, prescriptions, drugs, childcare, and seniors care. Thank you.
Representing the Christian Heritage Party, please welcome Sean Mulligan.
Can everyone hear me if I stand?
Yes.
No? People in the front row can't hear me? Okay.
Speaking louder than everyone else is.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this special event this evening, this great debate. Any veterans among us? Oh, okay. A special welcome to you and thank you for your military services to Canada. We are deeply grateful for your sacrifices and your presence among us this evening. We salute you. The Christian Heritage Party Canada was granted a charter by Elections Canada in June 1986 as an official federal party in Canada. We fielded candidates for the first time in the 1988 Canadian federal election. We have been participating in every general election ever since. We are Canada's only pro-life and pro-family federal party. As a party, the policies of our platform are based upon Judeo-Christian values and virtues. We believe in God, the author of life. I am a Catholic Christian and a Christian Canadian. My wife Grace and I are married 30 years, and we are the parents of 2 sons. My cultural heritage is Irish, and my wife's cultural heritage is Filipino. The Christian Heritage Party is the only federal party that endorses the principle of the preamble to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It reads, whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. As Christians and as law-abiding citizens of Canada, we believe in the sanctity of life, life from conception to natural death, life from womb to tomb. Sadly, the womb has become one of the most dangerous places in Canada. We oppose abortion. Adoption is a better option. We oppose euthanasia. Palliative care is a better option. We support traditional marriage between one man and one woman. We have over 40 policies in our platform.
Thank you, Sean. Your time is up.
Okay.
Representing the Conservative Party of Canada, please welcome Abdul Abdi.
Okay, so the mic is on. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming here tonight. This is a perfect example of what democracy is all about. This month marks a very important anniversary for me because it's 30 years since I came to Canada as a young man. Of those 30 years, 15 of them I've been a law enforcement officer in the same neighborhoods that we're sitting on tonight. My name is Abdul Abdi. I'm the Conservative candidate for Ottawa-West-Nepean. I'm very, very proud to be part of this event because I believe that I bring a lot. A lot I bring to the table includes the fact that I've been a police officer with the Ottawa Police Service, now on an unpaid leave of absence in the last 15 years. I also worked with the RCMP National Security for 2 years across the country. Prior to joining the police service, I worked 8 years at the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa, where I worked with young people, making sure they make the right choices, guiding them to the right path. I'm a father. I have 3 kids. Don't let the looks fool you. My daughter is almost 16. The daughter is 13 and my son is 10 years old. I can tell you that there are so many things that are going on in this election, and there are so many things at stake. The Liberal Party has chosen the slogan, "Choose Forward." 4 years ago, you chose Forward with them. We know what the results were. They promised you they were going to give you a balanced budget. You know what happened? The budget still balanced itself. They said they're going to be open for democracy and transparency. You know what's happening? We can't even let the Ethics Commissioner testify. They say they're going to want your money. They brought $12 million to Loblaws so they can change their fridges. They say they're going to look after women's rights. They watched Jody and Jane being thrown under the bus. And when those two, especially Jody, was feeling that she had an opportunity to be vindicated,
Thank you, Abdul.
the Liberal Party blocked that vindication. Thank you.
And representing the Liberal Party of Canada, please welcome Anita Vandenbel.
So many of you here tonight. This is Democracy in Action. And I've had the tremendous honor for the last 4 years of serving you in Parliament. And during those 4 years, between 2015 and 2019, Canadians are better off. Our economy has created over 1 million new jobs. Our GDP growth is the highest in the G7. And unemployment is at the lowest that it's been in my lifetime. We've invested in young people, including right here in Ottawa-West-Nepean at Algonquin College with the Bel-Air district that's giving young people the entrepreneurial and innovation skills that they need in order to succeed. And we've left no one behind. Poverty in Canada is at the lowest that it's ever been. We have lifted 850,000 Canadians out of poverty, including 300,000 children in the last 4 years, largely because of our Canada Child Benefit, our support for low-income seniors, and our national housing strategy. Right here, we have built 42 new seniors affordable units above the Carleton Community Health Centre, and we built a new women's shelter in Nelson House. We have put a price on pollution. We are investing billions in the environment and in transit and in a low-carbon economy, and we will hit net zero emissions by 2050. Now, I'm not the kind of parliamentarian who looks for my name in the newspaper or makes partisan attacks. I work collaboratively with communities, like I did on the wetlands near the D&D campus, where I worked with the Wildlife Center and communities and government, and we now have 190 new species that have now returned this spring to those wetlands. I'm not someone who does partisan attacks. I have been accessible to all of you. And in fact, I promised one promise in the last election, and that was that I would keep doing my coffee hour every Friday. And I see some of you here who've attended those coffee hours, some of you with tough questions. But I have always been accessible. I'll be there for you, and I'll continue to be there for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you all of our candidates. I think we're in for a really good discussion tonight. I have this group of questions that have been provided by the Community Association. I'm going to start with those. After I go through them, then I'm going to get to your questions. So the idea is that we're going to get through as many as we possibly can tonight. You notice the order that the candidates are sitting. We started with Dave for the opening statements. Now I'm going to start with Serge for the answer to the first question, and then for the next question, we'll start with Angela, and so on. So everybody will get one chance to answer first, and a chance to answer second and third, and so on. That's how the evening will proceed. Our first question for the evening, and this goes to Serge, and then we'll go from there to Angela and Sean, and so on. Here's the question. What do you consider the most important issue facing Ottawa-West-Nepean? And the part two on that, if elected, what would you do to address it? Serge, you have 30 seconds. Sorry, 1 minute. 1 minute. Let's be fair, right? A two-parter, 1 minute, sure.
Well, I think a very important issue that's being faced in Ottawa-West-Nepean is the housing prices. We have a housing market bubble that's fueled by low debt, by increased money supply, and young people, most of them, they cannot even afford buying real estate. So whoever owns assets, their wealth grows. Whoever doesn't is just poor. Why? Because of inflation, because of cheap debt. That cheap debt is available to those who really have money. So basically what's happening is just income inequality that's widening. According to a CBC report, over 48% of Canadians will be in bankruptcy if they're faced with a bill of with a bill of $200. So most people won't be able to pay their bills. So I think this is one of the biggest issues. To address that, we would have to address the issues of the interest rates, of salaries.
Thank you very much. Angela.
That's great, thank you. So I am a labor economist. I'm gonna have to say that it's affordability. So what has happened is that, as the Member of Parliament for this area noted, unemployment is low, GDP is growing, but wages and pensions aren't growing. And the cost of housing and the cost of food are increasing faster than wages and pensions are. And so that shows up in a number of different ways in people's lives, and the NDP plan to address that is going to come out in a number of different ways. So our plan is to tax the rich a little bit more. We're proposing a wealth tax, yeah, right? We're proposing a wealth tax. We're going to close some loopholes. We're going to go after tax evaders, and we're going to invest that money in things that make your life more affordable, reduce inequality, and tackle climate change. So we're going to make a massive investment in public transit, make it reliable, make it affordable. We're going to have a massive investment in retrofitting housing, which will lower your energy bills.
Thank you very much. Next up is Sean Mulligan with the answer.
It was a few weeks ago, you may have seen the report on TV that we're in dire straits right here in Ottawa-West-Nepean for food banks and poor people, okay? I think there were 3 or 4 electoral districts in the Ottawa area in the top 10 in Ontario who are struggling, families are struggling. Thank God we have the food banks here. So I would say the most important thing, yeah, it is important that people are fed. Thank God we do have the food banks here. We're trying to lessen the dependency on food banks. We're trying to get people out to work, even if it's part-time. That'll put a lot less strain on the food banks. Now, I know Jesus said that the poor will always be with you. So this is our challenge, you know, in 2019 and 2020. How do we address the poor among us? And so we have to work with the food banks, keep feeding these people, but see if we can get some of them on part-time jobs. That's what I would do is look for part-time jobs for these people.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Abdul Hadi to answer the question, please.
Thank you very much. Well, my friends, the main issue here for me is safety and security. there's no way you can slice it. And I've taken this as my first priority because as a frontline police officer, I've had to attend several cases where shootings have been taking place. If you've looked at the Ottawa Citizen, it's reported that just last year alone, there have been over 80 shootings in this city. If it doesn't happen to your backyard, it doesn't mean you're immune to it. I have been to funerals, I've been to burials, I've had parents who cried over my shoulders. And that's because of what's happening in this city. I've seen kids that used to coach basketball at the Boys and Girls Club who become homicide victims in this city. And therefore, I believe if we do not bring a national plan to this situation, no one is going to pay attention to it. Andrew Scheer has brought up a plan which is going to bring a gang prevention plan that will give law enforcement officials, agencies, the tools they need, but at the same time, we're going to help those young communities, young families in neighborhoods that are most affected.
Thank
and
you
I
very
am
much,
taking that
Edward.
as my #1 priority.
Thank you very much. Next up with her answer, Anita Vandenbelt.
Yes, thank you. I think the most important issue is cost of living. Yes, the economy is doing well. We need to close the gap between the rich and the poor, and so the first thing we did do is actually increase taxes on the top 1%, and we decreased taxes on the middle class. But more importantly, we brought in the Canada Child Benefit, which has helped so many families to come out of poverty, to be able to go back to school, and to be able to raise their kids. We're going to go further. We're going to be putting in universal pharmacare. We're going to make sure that seniors who have worked hard all their lives are able to not only have increased OAS and GIS payments, but we're going to increase the CPP survivors benefits. And one of the most important things we can do for the sandwich generation is our caregiver tax credit and making sure that those people who have to take time off work to care for their loved ones are able to do so. And in fact, for parents, we are proposing to have, in addition to the added parental leave that we created, we're proposing a 1-year parental benefit for everybody.
Thank you very much,
life
Anita.
affordable.
Our final respondent is Dave Stibbe.
Hi. So anybody that says that there is only one important issue in a riding doesn't really understand geography. The fact is, when I've been knocking on doors and I talk to different people, we have different concerns that are our priorities. In the waterfront communities, I can tell you that many people are concerned about flooding. It is a real issue, and they're concerned about insurance. When I talk to some of our other neighborhoods, crime is definitely one of those issues, and gun control. In other communities, it is affordability and housing, absolutely. And with seniors, which is 20% of our riding, there is a number of huge issues. Assisted dying laws, there is affordability, farm, and all these different issues kind of are affecting them because our economy is not really supporting the seniors. So one of the plans that the Green Party has is for pharmacare as well as minimum income, guaranteed income, as well. Climate change is one of our priorities, and we are experiencing climate change. That flooding is no accident.
Thank you very much, Dave. Our next question provided by the Community Association, and the first respondent will be Angela McEwen. Here is the question. All municipalities in Canada are facing legislative and financial constraints. What will your government do to improve the overall governance and financial stability for the City of Ottawa, with particular emphasis on housing, infrastructure, and transportation issues? I'm going to repeat that. What will your government do to improve the overall governance and financial stability for the City of Ottawa, with particular emphasis on housing, infrastructure, and transportation issues? Angela, you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. So I don't really think that there's necessarily a role for the federal government to do anything about governance. In Ontario, municipalities are a creature of the province, and so that is definitely not within the federal jurisdiction. But in terms of working with municipalities to invest in things that are important to people, municipalities are at the front line of climate change, and they're at the front line of reducing inequality. And so our plan is to work with municipalities to expand public transit and to make it work for people. Public transit does not work for people in Ottawa-West-Nepean. You're either getting too many buses that are empty or not enough buses that are full. And we need to change that. We need to work with the city, we need to work with people who are using the services and are affected by the decisions that are made in order to make these services work better for you.
Thank you very much. Sean Mulligan, you are up next.
We talked about the city of Ottawa, we talked about infrastructure, we talked about transportation, and I guess we're all happy to know that we have, is it 2 weeks now under our belt for the light rail transit, and more lines to come for the city of Ottawa, and financial assistance from the province and the federal government. So what I'm looking at right now is infrastructure, okay? According to the Christian Heritage Party of Canada, we do not like borrowing money. So if we're going to build a bridge or a school or a highway, that money has to be in the bank already, okay? We don't want to borrow money at high interest rates and download it onto the next generation. So this is how we do it. We go project by project, but that money has to be in the bank before we put shovels to the ground. And congratulations, and we'll be probably looking at phase 2 pretty soon down the road.
Thank you very much. Abdul, you are up next.
I think the most important thing is, first of all, to have a responsible, at the same time, respectful relationship between all parties. I know over the years, there have been situations where the provincials and the feds and municipalities were pointing fingers at each other. And I think that's something that we need to grow up. We're all adults. We can figure this out for the generation that is to come. So for me, in terms of the question about infrastructure, we've supported previous infrastructures in terms of the light rail, the expansion that has taken place here in Ottawa. I will continue to stand up for Ottawa-West-Nepean, the city of Ottawa, to ensure that where there is support needed, that the federal government will always be there, whether it be housing, or whether it be infrastructure, or whether it be transit. Thank you.
Thank you.
When we talk about deficits, we have to talk about the infrastructure deficit, and we have to talk about investments in things like housing and transit that are going to save us money down the line. And that's why our government has already given the city of Ottawa $1.1 billion for LRT, for phase 2 LRT to Ottawa-West-Nepean, and you've seen that that is the greatest climate emissions reduction in Ottawa's history. But more importantly, we gave an extra $156 million so that we could build the crossings, like at Croydon Avenue, the green technology to be able to get people to transit. This last spring, we gave an extra $57 million to the city of Ottawa, specifically for infrastructure around transit and green technology, and that's double of what we were able to give through the gas tax. In addition, we built 200 affordable housing units, and we also put $7 million extra for housing for refugees. But that is compared to $100 million or more that is being cut. But I have a letter from Jim Watson saying by the province for things like public health, children's services, long-term care,
Thank you very much,
and addiction
Anita.
services.
Thank you. Great stuff.
So, 90% of Canadians live in cities, yet we force our cities to be the beggars at the budget table. Taxation is unfair to cities. The federal government likes to control the purse strings as well as the provincial government. Yet we all live in our cities, and cities are directly responsible for providing the services that are most important to us in our daily lives. And the Green Party is one of their key platform policies is to examine federal tax reform. And sincerely, I think that we should give more rights to the cities in terms of getting first dibs at those tax dollars that we give to our government, and giving them the right to decide how they spend it. Because I can tell you, governments like to play the game, but it's the cities that really affect our lives. So that is one of our main goals, is to enable cities to have direct access to taxation.
Thank you, Dave. The final answer on this question is from Serge Gorkian.
In PPC, we believe in reducing the role of the big government and municipalities and local communities. Basically, we would like to give more opportunities for the municipalities and provinces to tax. At some point, we're planning to just remove the GST and let provinces and municipalities charge their tax, and with that money, they'll be able to invest in infrastructure more properly. We also believe that the big government is not effective when it comes to mega projects like this. So it would be always good to bring some investors on board and have large companies involved in this too. Possibly sell infrastructure bonds as well. But for this, we would have to reduce the debt levels of local cities and provinces.
Thank you very much. This next question will not be spoken. It will simply require a show of hands. And that is whether you actually live in Ottawa-West-Nepean, the riding that you're seeking to represent. So, can I have a show of hands, please? How many of the candidates actually live in Ottawa-West-Nepean? 2? And just to make sure, how many do not live in Ottawa-West-Nepean? Okay. Thank you very much. You got a round of applause just by showing. That's remarkable. You're a wonderful audience. The next question. As the MP for Ottawa-West-Nepean, will you commit to advocating for the protection of existing NCC-owned natural space corridors and green space within the riding from development, irrespective of how such corridors may have been designated under the most recent NCC Green Space Master Plan? Starting off with this question, let me read that again, because it's a long one, another one. As the MP for Ottawa-West-Nepean, will you commit to advocating for the protection of existing NCC-owned natural space corridors and green space within the riding from development, irrespective of how such corridors may have been designated under the most recent NCC Green Space Master Plan?
One more time.
I'm running out of gas here. First up, with his answer, Sean Mulligan.
Okay, the last question, who doesn't live in Ottawa-West-Nepean? I could not lie because I'm a Christian, representing Christian here at the park. So you're down to 4 people to select for your MP now, okay? So, NCC, as the Member of Parliament, I would work very, very closely with the Commissioner of the NCC. And so this is an open-ended question because projects come and go. Yes, we do need green spaces, but we also need space for development also, because as the population grows, this is a case-by-case analysis. But I love green spaces. We have them in Ottawa here. We have them in Gatineau Park as well. So I love these green spaces. But again, case-by-case, working very closely with the Commissioner for the NCC.
Thank you. Abdul, you're up next.
I'll go back to Ottawa-West-Nepean, whether I live here or not. I just wanted, just for the record, to reflect, for over 20 plus years, I've worked here, 12 years at the Ottawa Police Station in Greenbank, and also 8 years at the Boys and Girls Club in the Laurier. I've also lived here in Ottawa-West-Nepean twice in the past, in Navajo Deerfield, and I've also lived near Medhurst and Knoxville. To the question in regards to the NCC, again, we have to be people of law. The NCC obviously has a governance, we have governance, we have to work with people. We cannot pit one person against another. So in other words, we can't just say, if, regardless of the existing bylaws that have come in place, we have to respect, we have to work together. The NCC has a mandate, and we also have a mandate. So if we can't work together, we're only going to create a confrontational situation. But for green space, I'm 100% there, because I have 3 kids and I want to do some places with them for picnic. So you can count me in.
Thank you very much. Anita, that you move a little bit closer to the mic.
So my answer to this is absolutely yes, and I have a track record to prove it. Many of you here in this room know how hard I fought on Mud Lake, and also on the wetlands near the D&D campus. And one of the things that I've been able to do, there's an incredible corridor where wildlife have to go through. And we need to make sure that those wildlife and those species who have returned are able to get through the green belt corridor throughout the city. And Because of that, the Wildlife Center was asking for $5 million to do a feasibility study for wildlife underpasses under Moody Drive, which would connect all the green spaces in the city, and I managed to get the funding for that. So I'm absolutely going to fight to maintain our green spaces, and we were able to give $55 million extra to the NCC for critical infrastructure, like the berm in Britannia and other bike paths and things that, especially the ones that were affected by the floods. So my answer is absolutely yes.
Thank you. Dave, you have the floor.
I have to commend Anita on her work on Mud Lake. I will also take some credit there because I was the one that brought it to her attention through my Facebook group. I posted the first pictures of some destruction that the NCC was doing through a misapplied contractor. I love the NCC. I think they do great things for our city, but I also think that often the economic pressures on the NCC are obviously hidden underneath the surface of what they have to do, and then they open up lands to different economic development. I do not believe in that whatsoever. I think that our greenbelt lands, our parks are there for all eternity and need to be protected at all costs, because as our city grows, that will actually create the resilience in our city to actually have that growth without affecting, even things like mental health. So yes, I am absolutely in there to protect the NCC lands.
Thank you very much. Sir, your answer, please.
I believe that the green spaces and the wetlands and the parks make Ottawa a very beautiful city, and I think it's very important to preserve it. The only thing is we have to be careful with the pressure from developers, because if they build too much, too high downtown, then you're going to have traffic issues, you're going to have parking issues. If they build way too far, then you're going to have issues with building infrastructure, which is very expensive. I think that there could be a solution for that, to charge them partially for building that infrastructure and move the developments away. But yes, we have to preserve the green spaces. Thank you.
Angela, you have the last word on this question.
Thank you. So this morning I was actually lucky enough to have a little tour of the Wood Park Community Garden, which is on NCC lands, and I commend the community that got that community garden up and going. It's a wonderful space. If you've biked along there, you've seen it, it's quite beautiful. And I think we need to think creatively about how we're using that space and how we integrate green space with the rest of our lives. There's a proposal to possibly use some of the NCC lands as not-for-profit, community-led affordable housing mixed with green space and community gardens. And that would be tremendous for people's mental health. If people were able to live in medium-density housing, mixed in with the ability to have those community gardens, which is so revitalizing for people's mental health. I grew up on a farm, so when I get my hands dirty, like when I'm up really upset, I like to weed because it makes me
Thank you, Angela. The next question, the first respondent will be Abdul Abdi. This is the question. What is your party's plan to help Canada do its part to limit the global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, as agreed to in the Paris Agreement? Read that again. What is your party's plan to help Canada do its part to limit the global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, as agreed to in the Paris Agreement? Abdul, you have 1 minute.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I just want to say to you guys, for us, in terms of conservatives, climate is very, very important. We believe in climate change. We believe that we have to preserve the future for tomorrow. We're not going to be opposed to anything that is going to make our world a better place. I think that's very important to say off the bat after the kids, and I want the best future for them. In terms of the Conservative Party, we believe in innovation, and we believe in technology. We believe the ingenuity of Canadians is at the hands of what could be the better for tomorrow. So we believe in bringing in the home renovation tax credit, for example, which is going to give $3,800 for homeowners to make sure their home is more environmentally friendly, more green. The other stuff we want to do is also we want to give opportunities to businesses and Canadians to be environmentally aware and bring some ideas that is going to move us forward. So we have a very robust business plan, but one of the things we don't have, taxation.
Thank you very much. Anita, your answer, please.
So we have put a price on pollution, and we have returned every dollar of that back to Canadians. We also are investing have invested $20 billion in green transit, $9 billion for green technology, and we're phasing out coal by 2030. Our clean fuel standard is going to reduce 30 million tons, and we are also, that's the equivalent of 7 million cars off the road, and we're reducing government emissions by 40% by 2030. But I just want to address one other thing, because it is one thing to say that we're going to do all of this, but when we actually do, we get criticized. When we did the announcement of Loblaws, I was there. This was an open competition based on how many emissions reductions per dollar. Loblaws put three quarters of that money. For $12 million, we reduced 50,000 car equivalents a year off the road. And we can't just do that with companies we like, that treat their employees well and that are socially responsible. We need to convince the ones that aren't doing it. And the way that we're doing that
Thank you
is
very much,
to use
Anita.
the carbon economy.
Dave, you're up next.
So the Green Party has been steadfast for years that climate action is necessary. And unfortunately, I feel the other party's promises are future promises. They promise, but I don't trust them to make action on that. We cannot buy a pipeline and transition our economy to the green economy. Paying a corporation, instead of legislating that corporation to actually force them into changing because they can't afford it themselves, is not the way to do it. You do not pay someone to do something if they can afford to do it. You make them do it. These are the necessary actions we have to take to actually respond to the climate crisis. Mission Possible is the Green Party's change. Everything in there is about making it a priority. Yes, it will cost money, but you just talk to your children, talk to the students, and think and just realize that as adults in the room, we seem to not understand how serious this is, but our children do, and our students do. And I think we need to take this seriously and not make long-term promises.
Thank you very much. Sir, your answer, please.
Canada emits 1.6% of the world's CO2, and it's actually a net sink for CO2. China emits 29%, India emits 6.6%. So those two countries, they have 3 billion people in between of them. If they have the same footprint as us, we're done. No matter what you do here in Canada, it's not going to help. So we believe that the best way to tackle this problem is to invest in technology. We don't believe in punishing people by increasing the taxes on gas, because it's going to come out with inflation, and all of you will feel it. We believe in investing in technology and sharing that technology, so that those countries are able to skip the level of innovation and they'll be able to take on it. I think we have a big problem actually with the policy debate on the environment. It's like a dogma now where anything you say, like you're attacked as a denialist immediately. Like you cannot even have a conversation on
Thank you very much, Serge. Angela, you're up next.
Thank you. So as I mentioned in my opening statement, we have about 10 years to cut our emissions in half. And so the next 4 years will be absolutely critical in setting us down the right path. I completely agree with David on that point. And we're already feeling the costs of it. We're seeing extra costs in Ottawa-West-Nepean from flooding, from the tornado, from unpredictable weather, and health effects of that. So the NDP plan, I'm just going to say it again, we're going to tax the rich, and we're going to use that money to invest in climate action immediately. We're going to create climate jobs, jobs that will help us reduce our climate emissions and will make life better for you. So like, even if you don't believe in climate science, we're making a better future. So we're building, So, and I disagree with some other solutions that have been put forward. I think we need to regulate corporations to buy fridges that work. I think we need
Thank you
to
very
help
much,
people
Angela.
retrofit up front rather than having it as a tax cut.
Sean, you get the final answer on this question.
Okay, I'm going to run through the policy we have as a Christian Heritage Party. CO2 is not pollution. It's a beneficial natural gas needed by all plants. Carbon taxes are just a tax grab. The Prime Minister cannot legally force the provinces to collect taxes. Carbon tax will do nothing for the environment. The CHP would rescind any federal carbon tax imposed by a previous government. We object to the carbon tax on several grounds. One is carbon dioxide is essential for photosynthesis. Higher level CO2 produces greater plant growth, which we need to feed the world's population. There's no clear evidence that monies collected through carbon taxes will do anything to reduce climate change or improve the environment. They will, however, absolutely increase the cost of Canadians of all goods and services. Canadians are already struggling to maintain their homes and families. Penalizing them for heating and lighting their homes is simply bad policy. So the CHP would rescind any federal carbon tax imposed by the Liberals.
Thank you very much, Sean. That ends this particular question. Our new question, and the first respondent will be Anita. All right. I'm going to give Serge 30 seconds to respond to
Well,
Anita.
we never disagreed with the science. We just would like to have a debate, would like to have many opinions, would like to have many solutions, because as I said, Canada does not emit as much as other countries. And if they have the same footprint, if they have the same lifestyle as yours, then we're done. This is not a solution to just tax people here. This is it.
Our next question, and the first respondent will be Anita. What concrete steps do you propose to deal with the impacts of climate change, such as, for example, widespread damage due to floods and forest fires caused by more extreme weather? I'll read that again. What concrete steps do you propose to deal with the impacts of climate change, such as, for example, widespread damage due to floods and forest fires caused by more extreme weather? Anita, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, and I appreciate that question because, of course, we live in a riding that has been impacted twice in 3 years by devastating floods. And one of the things that we will be doing, a re-elected Liberal government, is changes to the EI system. So those people whose livelihoods have been affected because of the floods, whether it's because they can't get to work or because their homes are damaged and they need to be sandbagging, will be able to collect a disaster benefit through EI. Another change that we're proposing is low financing loans for flood protection. Too often, insurance companies are either not covering flood protection or they charge exorbitant rates for it. So we will make sure that we have low interest financing for that. And the other thing, and many of you may have seen this during the Britannia floods, where we have now geographic mapping of where the floods are, where they can be happening, and we're able to predict that. And in addition, we provided funding to the NCC to heighten the berm in Britannia and Belltown, and to restore the berm where it was damaged in the last 2 floods.
Thank you very much, Anita. Dave Stibbe, you are up next.
Extreme weather is going to be a bigger issue, and even cities like ourselves where we might have felt immune to the fact that climate change was happening because we didn't feel we were going to be impacted. We're now realizing that flooding, tornadoes will be happening here regularly, and I think to address those, you really have to look at both communication to ensure that people know when these things are going to happen and what the solutions are. We would definitely work with our armed forces to implement and have them support areas during emergencies. Another one is through infrastructure support, so we definitely need to work on improving the infrastructure to protect our neighborhoods from climate change, and sometimes that's not possible, but definitely in the case of emergency, we need to be there, like for the tornadoes and the flooding. And last but not least, we definitely want to improve the insurance industry so that insurance people cannot avoid insuring those that need it the most.
Thank you very much. Serge, you have 1 minute.
We should be able to provide financial assistance to those whose houses get flooded. it's very hard to impose anything on insurance companies because those are businesses. But what we can do is to buy off those houses that are constantly flooded if there is no other solution. Otherwise, work with engineers, try to create some infrastructure that would support, that would basically provide a solution for those houses not to get flooded. And also, I think it's important to have Army support in case of emergencies. This is the biggest tool we have when something bad happens.
Thank you very much. Angela, your answer, please.
Yeah, of course, financial support to cities for when emergencies happen, but I think we also need to think about how we're managing our rivers, how are we managing our wetlands, how are we making sure that if there is flooding, if houses are in floodplains and they're just going to be in floodplains, I completely agree with Serge. Maybe we buy those houses from those people and return that land to the water and help people move away from lands that are no longer livable. They bought those houses thinking that they would be livable and they aren't anymore. And so being honest with people, having maps of where the floodplains are so that people know where they can and cannot build, managing wetlands so that the flooding doesn't happen and so that wetlands are not adversely affected when we create berms, for example. So we need to make sure that our answers to this don't create more problems. So I would say being thoughtful and collaborative in our response.
Thank you very much. Sean, can we hear your answer, please?
Okay, very quickly, 3 points. Yes, we should, anyone who buys property along the lake or river should have automatic flood insurance. This should be automatic, and this should be part of their insurance plan and policy. Also, cut the red tape. There are people who are suffering, going back to 2017 flood, and still haven't received payments or any financial help. So we've got to cut the red bureaucratic tape. And just one last point on the policy for the CHP is the conclusion of burning fossil fuels that are released into the atmosphere of CO2 cause significant climate change, particularly global warming, is an unproven theory. We do not deny that extreme weather events have been happening. We only know that there are many scientists who have not accepted the media-promoted theory of CO2-based climate change.
Thank you very much, Sean. Final response on this question from Abdul.
Thank you very much. So the reality of it is, first of all, anyone who's in this room and has been affected by the floods, of course, the city came around and we all came together as one, and that's the way of the future. We should all be there for one another. We need the most. So congratulations to Ottawa for the way you responded to those floods. Moving on from that, I think it's very important for us to understand that anyone who gets impacted and they need the help financially, we should all be there for them provincially and municipally. And I know the provinces sets money aside just for disaster relief, and any support the Fed will give, I will never stand in the way to assist. But we're already doing that through our plan of $3,800, home renovation, green renovation tax credit, which will help homeowners in those closer to the waters to be better prepared. And so, as Abdul Abdi, as your next member of Parliament for Ottawa-West-Nepean, I will never stand in the way of assisting people who've been affected by floods.
Thank you very much, Edward. Our next question from the community associations. The first respondent will be Dave Stibbe. And here it is. Housing costs are getting more and more out of control. Our vulnerable populations are desperate, and working people are spending an ever-increasing amount of their income to find shelter. What is your party proposing at the federal level to remedy this urgent problem? I'll read that again. Housing costs are getting more and more out of control. Our vulnerable populations are desperate, and working people are spending an ever-increasing amount of their income to find shelter. What is your party proposing at the federal level to remedy this urgent problem? Dave, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. That's a great question. So every time there's an election, all the parties promise all these new, small, different programs to support the people in need. those programs come with a burden of responsibility on those people in need to figure out how to apply to those programs, and then the waiting lists, the waiting times. So the Green Party has been pretty clear on this. We want to create a guaranteed livable income. And that way, those of the people that need that money know that they are going to have the basic support, one program that collects all the monies that are dispersed anyways, because we are still spreading that money through these programs. One program, make it simple, and allow everybody to access that needs it.
Thank you very much, Dave. Sir, your answer, please.
If we address the issue of housing market, overall, we're going to solve this issue as well. We have money laundering happening in our real estate. According to some reports, it's from $20 to $40 billion. We have too much bureaucracy, too much red tape when it comes to construction and development. The construction cost per square foot is just too expensive. So we just have to work on promoting the free market. We have to work on dealing with the bubble, and then the free market will take care of everything. The prices will fall, and basically you will have all the needs on housing covered, provided by the market.
Thank you very much. Angela, your answer, please.
I could not disagree more. The free market has utterly failed both homeowners and renters. The NDP commits to inserting additional $5 billion of funding into affordable housing in the first year and a half of an NDP government. We would kickstart the construction of cooperative housing, social housing, and nonprofit housing through fast funds to streamline the application process and help communities get the expertise and assistance that we need. That we have co-op housing in Ottawa, and it's wonderful housing. I was there for the housing announcement with the leader, Jagmeet, and it's beautiful, but we don't have the funds in place to maintain it, so we've also committed to have the funds in place to help co-op housing maintain their housing. We want to support choices for people, we want to increase the supply, and we want to make a real difference in people's lives.
Thank you very much. John, can we hear your answer, please?
I remember growing up, I remember my mother saying always, she used to work at the NRC, that you should never spend more than 25% of your income on housing, never ever. But we've seen an increase 30%, 35, 40, 45, up to 50%. Our income spent just on housing alone.
It's 80 now.
80% now? Okay. Okay. And that's a lot higher than 25%. So anyway, there's a lot of government departments. We should be setting up an ombudsman just in charge of housing in the city of Ottawa. Because a lot of these people are desperate, they just don't know who to call. They can't depend on their councillors or their MPs and so on. We should have an ombudsman, which we do for the military and other departments, a toll-free number to call. It's tragic what happened to that woman last week. Her ceiling was caving in for her daughter. That should never happen here in the city of Ottawa, never.
Thank you very much. You are up next.
Absolutely, housing is very critical, and that's why Andrew Scheer and the Conservative, the Conservative Party has a very, very robust plan to help with this. First of all, we're going to fix the housing stress test to ensure that that test does not become too difficult for people who want to buy their first home. The second thing is we also want to increase the amortization period to 30 years. This will be able to lower the people's monthly payments for that. We also want to make sure that we investigate the issue of money laundering, which has become an issue, especially in some of the western provinces, British Columbia being one of them. And we also want to work with municipalities and provinces to ensure that there's more areas and set up for housing in terms of development or rentals. So that's one thing. However, we also just have to remember that the federal government does not have a credit card that is unlimited, and so we also have to,
Thank you very much.
Watch our budget.
Anita, you get the last word on this question.
you. Our $55 billion national housing strategy is the largest single investment in housing in Canadian history. It is cutting homelessness in half, and it enshrines housing as a right. And let's look at what we've already done, not just what we are going to do in the future. We've created 12,000 seniors housing, including right here in Ottawa-West-Nepean off of Merivale, 7,000 shelter spaces, 42,000 rental units through our RCFI financing, and we have put in a first-time home buyers incentive, which is going to allow people to get into buying a home for the first time by taking 10%. It's about $200 or $300 a month off of their mortgage payments. But more importantly, we have reinvested in co-op housing and in income supports. And we have also created almost 18,000 new Indigenous housing units. This is the single biggest investment because we know that when people have housing, everything else follows. And it is the single most important thing that we can do in terms of poverty reduction as well.
Thank you very much. Question 8, provided by the community associations, and the first respondent will be Serge. Assuming you are a thoughtful person who is familiar with the platform of the party for which you are running, name one plank of that platform with which you disagree. I think it's your favorite as well. I'm going to read that one more time. Assuming you are a thoughtful person who is familiar with the platform of the party for which you are running, name one plank of that platform with which you disagree. We're going to start with Serge. You have 1 minute.
Well, there's actually a few things that I would say I disagree with. Because wait. If you agree with everything, you don't have a free opinion. I have my own opinion, and a lot of other candidates, they don't. They just go ahead and they memorize whatever they're told to say, and this is it. I speak from my heart. There's few things I disagree. For example, I disagree on removing the capital gain tax. I think if anything is going to fuel the bubble. I think if anything is going to help the ultra-rich. I don't think it's going to help the most. Most of the people will take a small benefit from it because capital gain is only, you're taxed on half of it anyways. Capital gain tax is not that high. So there is one issue like this that I disagree. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Angela, you have 1 minute.
So Sarah, maybe you want to come over to the NDP. We're proposing to move the capital gains inclusion up to 75%. Yeah, this is like one of those job interview questions, right? What's your biggest weakness? So honestly and completely, that I love our platform. But if there one thing that, and I helped write it, so I mean that seems fair. And if there were one thing that I would change, it would be to make childcare a bigger priority. We are promising to invest $1 billion more than the Liberals have promised. The Liberals, I think, promised $7 billion over a certain number of years. Our 2015 platform on childcare was better. We promised to, over 5 years, ramp up to a national childcare program. It's going to take us longer. That's what we're promising this time.
Thank you very much. Sean, your answer, please.
I have to admit I don't have a straight answer for you because we do have over 40 policies on our platform, and all these policies are, they come to fruition through what we call policy conventions, okay? So I'm relatively new to the party. Yes, I did run in 2015, I was rookie candidate in 2015, and so I do have more experience and knowledge, but I've had a few minutes, in fact 3 days going over all our policies, and I don't think there's anything I would want to change overnight unless I participate in a policy convention. So right now, my answer would be no, sorry.
All right, thank you. Abdul, your answer, please.
And I think that's a very interesting question. So I would say that there's many things that I agree with my party, but if there is something that maybe one day I could make, that decision would be you know, how maybe we could have an unlimited credit card, just like the Liberals, so that we could just go and just spend without any limits. The reality of it is, we know that at the end of the day, we still have to pay what we have, and no credit card company will ever give you money for free. But you know what? That's why I'm proud to be a conservative, because we just don't have a free credit card.
Anita, you have 1 minute.
We haven't rolled out our entire platform, so I'm hoping this is still going to be in it, but I do believe that we could be doing more on international development. I would like to see us get to 0.7%. We've gone a long way, but I think that we need to be more ambitious, because it doesn't just affect the world, but it affects us here at home as well. I have voted against the party on a number of issues. Probably most notably is I abstained on the vote on electoral reform. I also voted in favor of the genetic discrimination. I thought that that was an incredibly important bill. And I also voted in favor of Kennedy Stewart's bill on women in politics and putting penalties, financial penalties on political parties if they don't nominate enough women. There's bills that I voted for that I would like to have seen gone further, like the assisted dying legislation. I advocated very strongly in caucus for advance directives, and of course at the end of the day on a confidence motion, you vote for the bill. But there's a number of occasions where I will look at not just what the people on the Friday coffee hour. In fact, there was one time where I decided how to vote based on my Friday coffee hour.
Thank you very much, Anita. Dave, you have the last word on this question.
I truly believe in the Green Party platform. I am not a person that would have ever thought I would have joined the political world. But when I decided to, it was a thoughtful process. I examined different platforms, I examined different connections that parties have to different issues. And this is the one platform that I authentically believe in, because it's comprehensive, it's thoughtful, and we always like to say within our own discussions that the Green Party is a bunch of thinkers. There is one policy, though, that I am a little bit concerned with, which is the taxation of financial transactions. They did not clarify it clearly, and I'm afraid that it might affect our day-to-day transactions on debit cards and credit cards, and I'm going to ensure that that is not the case. That is something that will affect regular citizens more than anybody else, and I feel that is not the policy that the Green Party really wants to follow. And I'm sure they will change it, because I've heard a lot from people already that that's a concern.
Thank you very much, Dave.
30 seconds?
Sean?
Thank you. I was just gonna, remind my colleague Anita here that absolutely I agree in terms of empowering women and more women in politics. But she had an opportunity to allow the Ethics Commissioner to walk in and vindicate Jody Ringo-Wilson. Instead, we decided to throw her under the bus. So let's not speak about women empowerment here when you had an opportunity to help women excel, and you chose instead to block the Ethics Commissioner from telling the truth.
Anita, a 30-second response, and then we're going to move on to our next question.
As many of you know, I have always fought for Parliament to be a place of civil discussion. And the reason that I voted no in that committee is that 8 weeks before an election, all parties were bringing their big guns, the TV cameras were on. The one place where we get real work done in committees is in committees. And they were hijacking our committee to turn it into question period, to turn it into grandstanding for the election. And the reason I voted no is because we weren't going to learn anything new, and I wanted to make sure that our committee was not going to turn into the kind of circus that you see in question period and elsewhere.
Thank you. Let's just go over the ground again for a rebuttal. Just to make it clear, when an answer by one candidate is directed specifically at another candidate, in fairness, we want to give that other candidate a chance to respond. Not to bring up some events that happened in the past, that's not necessarily relevant. So while I'm happy to allow the rebuttal in this case, but from now on we're going to stick specifically to anything that's a deliberate focus on another candidate. Okay, our final question from the community associations, and the first respondent will be Angela. Here is the question. What is your position on flavored e-cigarettes in light of the links between vaping and lung disease and deaths? Once again, what is your position on flavored e-cigarettes in light of the links between vaping and lung disease and deaths? Our first respondent is Angela.
So I've actually been really concerned about this. I've been reading about this in the news and worried about young people picking up vaping because they think it's not as dangerous as smoking. When I was little, my mom had asthma and had chronic bronchitis, and I would actually go up to people in restaurants and ask them to stop smoking because they were hurting my mom. And somebody gave me $5 to go away, like, shut up, kid. But I still worry about people's health. I worry about lungs in particular because it's so critical. And if young people are picking up this practice and it's going to damage the lungs for the rest of their life, I think we need to do more research into vaping in particular and how this is hurting people's health. I have a lot of concerns, and I would never want my daughter as a silly adolescent without the prefrontal cortex fully formed, making decisions that are going to affect her lifetime.
Thank you very much. Sean, you are up next.
I did get a chance to make a comment on the rebuttal mentioned by Anita earlier, so I'll answer this question first, if you don't mind. Okay. So this is obviously another health issue, and we've seen, you know, when the vapor cigarettes first came out, it was a new commodity, and so it was an experiment for a lot of people, switching over from regular cigarettes to e-cigarettes. We're just seeing right now the tip of the iceberg of what damage it could do to our health. We've had one major case in Canada, and I believe one young fellow passed away. We're seeing a few of them now crop up in the United States too. So we still do some research on this. It is a major health issue, so you can be sure that the news is going to spread fast, especially when it comes to health. So expect to hear more bad news before the government steps in.
Thank you. Abdul.
This one here, you don't really need to be a rocket scientist. I just come straight from being a parent of 3 kids. And every time as a youth worker in my days at the Boys and Girls Club, I see any kid smoking otherwise. To me, that was something that you immediately react to. Second of all, in terms of what's happening right now, yes, we need to work with Ottawa Public Health. We need to make sure that the City of Ottawa and the provinces work together to find out, first of all, if there are some of these causes are linked, if there's a correlation. But even without waiting for those kinds of research to come back out, what I see with young people, even as a law enforcement officer out there, anytime I see a young person smoking cigarette or even the vape, it doesn't matter what it is, I always take the time to discourage it. That is why they're young kids, and that's why we're the adults, and it doesn't take any policy for us to do the right thing such as that.
Thank you very much. Anita, you have 1 minute.
When I go to talk to grade 5 classes, this is one of the first issues that some of these young children are bringing up, as young as grade 5. And there was no legislation on this. We put legislation that is specifically geared toward keeping this away from minors. And one of those things is that they cannot have things like bubblegum flavor and things that are specifically targeted for minors. I believe we have to go further. I think that this is a health crisis in making, and I think that if you listen to our health minister just recently, she indicated that we are going to be taking further steps. One of the measures is going to be public awareness. Another is going to be we're going to have to do the research that is needed to find out how harmful this really is, and we're going to have to make sure that we keep it out of the hands of children.
Thank you very much. Dave, you have 1 minute.
I have a daughter that's just entered our local high school, Woodruff. I have a daughter in grade 6. And I can tell you it's not a public health crisis in the making, it's a public health crisis. There are doors removed from class or school washrooms because there is so much vaping going on. And just to give you a fact, one vape pod, which a typical teenager might go through in a day, has the equivalent nicotine, because that's the ones they buy illicitly, equivalent to an entire pack of cigarettes. So what we have done is opened the door to big tobacco to come back into our schools and basically target our youth. If you listen to any radio station, you are listening to advertisements for vaping products everywhere. And it is a public health crisis right now, and I'm sad and ashamed that people have not recognized this at the political level. This is important. This is something that we need to address, not through research over the next 2-3 years. We need to stop it now before we have the same issues we've had before with smoking.
Thank you very much. Sir, your answer, please.
Vaping has a lot of chemicals in it, and we don't know what's the long-term effects of it are. It's probably very unhealthy from what we see in the recent cases. I would not be surprised if those who did vaping just start developing cancer in 20 years from now. So whatever we did fighting cigarettes, I think we should promote the same thing for vaping as well. We should promote healthy lifestyle. I myself don't smoke. I think the smell of smoke is just awful. I think that the smell of vaping is bad too. We should just work on reducing the demand rather than fight the supply. Basically, work on young people and educating everyone that it's just bad for you. And at some point, those things will stop selling. That's it.
Thank you. Angela. You have answered already. Okay. Let us move on to the first question from you, our beloved audience. Here it is. If it came down to a choice, would you choose protecting the environment or protecting the economy? Please elaborate. I'll read that again. If it came down to a choice, would you choose protecting the environment or protecting the economy? Please elaborate. Our first respondent will be Abdul.
Very good question. So, personally, I will tell you that it is a balance. It's a balance between both. The environment is very, very important, and if we're going to have any future moving forward, we need to make sure that we have a wonderful community that we can all leave our young people to inherit. But at the same time, we're also balancing with the economy. So let me ask you folks, there's a province called Alberta. They have energy. They're Canadians. I tell people that we have a curse and we have a gift. The gift is what we have in Alberta. The curse has been the Liberal government. They have not been giving them the opportunity to open up the markets so that we have enough revenue that can come in and help us with our environment. So to answer that question, both are important to me, but we need to have a balance. The Liberals don't know what that balance is.
Thank you very much. Your answer, please.
I disagree with the premise of the question. I believe strongly that the economy and the environment go hand in hand. And in fact, in Ontario, when the Conservative government in Ontario got rid of the cap and trade, it cost $4 billion out of the Ontario economy. And that's not even including the costs of not acting. Anybody who lives along the river has seen the cost of not acting. And so what we need to be doing is what countries like Denmark are doing. There is a $1 trillion economy out there for green technology and green energy. We have already committed that we're going to cut taxes in half for any companies that invest in Canada and domestic companies that are committed to net zero technologies. This is it is an investment. It is something that is going to prevent the costs of not acting. And I lived in Bangladesh, where I saw what happens when climate change is already happening. The delta, all the farmland is salt, and you've got cyclones, and you can see the effects of that are that.
Thank you very much.
See the effects.
Dave, you're up next.
I honestly will support everything that Anita said. Unfortunately, I have no faith that her government will actually follow through on these promises because they have not before. The reality is that you cannot buy pipelines and support oil production and expect to reduce our carbon footprint. it's not possible. That doesn't mean we don't believe in supporting Alberta. I actually believe that we can transition their economy. Alberta is one of has the greatest solar potential out of all the provinces. They also have the greatest geothermal potential, and we can actually use existing orphan wells to search for that and actually use them. If we invest in Alberta, Alberta will come out a winner, and they will be happy with what we do for them. So I think that is the future, and I think that is the future of the economy, is to actually transition quickly. Countries that have chosen to go that path are leading economic development right now, and we have to move that path because we want to be the leaders, not
Thank
the
you very
followers.
much. Sir, you have 1 minute.
It should be a balance of both. We have to protect the environment, but we have to be also careful with our economy because it's fragile. We have high debt. We're producing oil in the west, but we don't have pipelines to bring it all the way to the east. In Montreal and Quebec City, we're actually buying oil from Saudi Arabia and Algeria. We're producing oil, we're selling it for cheaper to the States, yet we're buying it at market prices from the Middle East. Why? It doesn't make sense. I believe that oil will be obsolete in 10 years from now. It's going to be gone. The green energy will take over, but we cannot punish the existing market. We cannot punish people. We cannot punish the companies by imposing taxes. We should use those profits into and investing them in technology. And it's the future. Oil will be obsolete in 10 years from now. Stop sending money to the Middle East. That's it. Use our own oil.
Angela, your answer, please.
Okay, so a minute is not long enough to dig into all of the things that were wrong with what everyone else said. But, the environment is a critical part of the economy. Our society is a critical part of the economy. I'm an economist. The economy is not some abstract thing that's over here. It's everything we do in our daily lives. It's when we take care of our parents. It's when we buy groceries. It's when we grow food in our backyard. That's part of the economy. And so we need the environment to be healthy for us to be healthy and for our economy to be healthy. What the new Democratic Party is proposing, what the NDP is proposing, is to invest in climate jobs so we can actually create jobs that reduce our emissions. We can protect species at risk. The current legislation is good, but we do not have the enforcement that we need behind it in order to protect our whole economy and make it work for everyone instead of just the wealthy.
Thank you very much. The final answer to this question comes from Sean.
Well, when it comes to between the economy and the environment, it's always people first. Okay? We can grow the economy without destroying the environment. What's happening right now in Alberta, this province is on its knees right now. Okay? And because of the current government, current Liberal government, we cannot afford to re-elect a Liberal government. What's going to happen right now, these provinces will go into serious talks about separation from Canada. Okay? So we can increase the economy, okay, put people to work. We don't have to destroy the environment while we're doing that. And I agree with Serge that we have the renewable resources and non-renewable resources. We don't have to import oil from Saudi Arabia. No way.
Our second question from the audience reads as follows, and the first respondent to this will be Anita. Now that SNC-Lavalin did not receive a deferment, what is happening to the good jobs we kept hearing would be lost? And I'm going to just say that deferment, I think, audience member, you mean Deferred Prosecution Agreement, a DPA, which is what might have happened instead of actually being charged with a crime that they might have had to pay a fine instead. So, now that SNC-Lavalin did not receive a deferment, what is happening to the good jobs we kept hearing would be lost? Anita, you have 1 minute to start off.
Thank you. We are in a community here that had no job. And I think every person in this room knows somebody who lost their job, who lost their livelihood, their pensions, their survivor's benefits.
And it is absolutely devastating. And I can tell you right now that I was not the MP at the time that Nortel went down. But had there been a legal mechanism that could have saved Nortel, I would have hoped, and I would have fought, I would have influenced, I would have pressured, I would have done everything humanly possible to keep that company and to keep those jobs. Because we of all people in this riding, we know what happens when we lose those jobs. And a deferred prosecution agreement is like a plea bargain. It is essentially something, it is a legitimate tool, and I think that that kind of public discussion is a legitimate discussion to have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dave, you're next.
I actually believe what Prime Minister Trudeau was trying to do was the correct thing for his community. What I see happening, and I honestly believe this, is that he just has an inability to communicate with women and actually solve the problem behind quiet doors, right? And his immaturity, I think we are all starting to recognize regularly in the news, and I think that is the part that concerns me about the leadership of the Liberal Party, is we have chosen someone to lead our country that we believed was a mature, responsible person and had the values that we recognized that he professed out loud. But many of his actions have shown otherwise. And that is where I think the concern lies. I don't think the concern lies in what he was trying to do for SNC-Lavalin. I actually feel poorly about the outcome, but the scandal really rises out of the how they dealt with the situation. And that happens again and again, and you take you're no exception in that matter. You have to have the maturity to recognize where the responsibilities lie.
Serge, can we hear your answer, please?
Yes, I think that SNC-Lavalin should restructure itself. Those responsible, they have to be all punished. Because we have a case here, just like in the States, where people mismanage the companies and they're just too big to fail, and nothing bad happens to the executive team. We have to find who was responsible for what exactly, but the company itself, it should not be punished too much, because there's people working in this company, there's people who invested in the company is actually profitable, it does good work all over the country and international as well. We also believe at APC that we should be careful with the corporate welfare. We should be careful with the way we treat these big companies, because they end up doing just anything they want. Do we give the same treatment to small companies? Imagine a small bakery shop with like 5 employees. If they're caught doing something bad, immediately they're going to be punished. So why large companies?
Thank you very much, Serge. Angela, your response, please.
Thank you. I think the claims of the number of jobs that were at risk of being lost, it was pretty quickly shown that those were not accurate, that was not what would happen if there was a prosecution. And the question of whether or not a deferred prosecution agreement is useful is beside the point. It's the Attorney General's position to decide whether or not that's appropriate, and she decided that it wasn't. Even after taking the economic considerations into account. And then let's consider what it is that SNC-Lavalin does. They only do government contracts. So the jobs would be there no matter what. SNC-Lavalin was involved in our transit project. If it wasn't SNC-Lavalin that hired those people to do that project, it would be another engineering company that did that. So those jobs were never at risk. That was an inaccurate statement that came out of the Prime Minister's office, I guess.
Thank you very much, Angela. Sean, your answer, please.
I never worked at Nortel, but I did work at JDS Uniphase many, many years ago. And that came to a bad ending, because I used to invest in stocks through the employee stock purchase plan. And that came to a bad ending for JDS. So they shipped all their jobs overseas to China. Now, when it comes back to Canada, the Prime Minister, it's a question of trust and responsibility, okay? Total lack of trust, and this is just one scandal after another after another. remember, responsibility is always trump rights, okay? And he was totally irresponsible during this scandal. And he's going to be paying the price on October 21st for this.
Thank you, Sean. Abdul.
Hypocrisy, hypocrisy, hypocrisy. That's what the Liberals will tell you. We care about the neighborhoods, the low-income communities. And guess what they did? They protected SNC Lavalin, facing fraud, bribery charges. And guess what? They called small business owners tax cheats. 9,000 jobs? Angela, you're right. It's not there. The CEO came in and said, we don't know where that came from. They broke the law. JT, Justin Trudeau, did it twice. He broke the law. It's a fact. The RCMP wants to look into this. But guess what the Liberal Party's doing? They're blocking them. So guess what? They broke the law. They broke the law. They must pay the price October 21st.
And Anita.
I've already answered this, but I do want to say that I was the chair of the Liberal Women's Caucus. It was my job to bring the voices of the women in caucus to the Prime Minister, and I can tell you that he listened every single time. You can see it in our policies. Not one policy went forward without the Women's Caucus. And I know that even on certain occasions he came to listen to our caucus and he reversed himself after meeting with us. So I just want to talk about that in terms of how he treats women. It was my job to bring the voices of women, and I can testify that he listened to us.
And speaking of that, we must follow the law. So if my colleague on the right got an opportunity, everyone has to get an opportunity.
We're not going to get into a debate. This is not the format.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay. Now, I think all candidates have responded. Let's move on to our next question. This is something a little bit different because this questioner has asked that Abdul Abdi be the first respondent to it. So I'm going to start with Abdul, and then we're going to pick up after that with Serge. Just go through the list that way. Here is the question with Abdul as the first respondent. What will your foreign policy be toward the United States if Donald Trump is re-elected? I'll read that again. What will your foreign policy be toward the United States if Donald Trump is re-elected? Let's start with Abdul.
So thank you whoever asked that question, and thank you for honoring me to go first. I must appreciate that, so thank you. Our foreign policy is not necessarily with an individual, it's with the people of the United States of America. We share the longest border. We are very close in terms of trade, travel. There are people. We have hockey together, and in many cases, we have baseball in this case, in terms of the Blue Jays. So we're very close. They're our neighbors, they're our friends. And when you bring a question like that in terms of Donald Trump and if he gets reelected, I would encourage our government to have a professional working relationship, putting the interests of Canada first. But guess what here? Let's not look at this as in something that is going to be negative for Canada. If Donald Trump gets elected, the people of the United States of America have spoken. And guess what? 4 years ago, we respected the Liberals with their mandate. I think we can respect the Americans making that decision. Surely they can do that.
Thank you very much. We're actually going to pick up with Angela. So Angela is next. You would have been the first respondent, but you're going to be second in this case.
Okay, thank you very much. So what would our foreign policy be with the United States? I think that I agree with Abdi, actually. Our relationship is with Americans writ large, and they are literally our cousins often. We have very similar histories, and we've managed to get along. This is actually one file that I think the Liberal government has managed quite well. As soon as Donald Trump was elected, they set up an office to monitor what was happening, to form relationships with governors, with congresspeople, with allies in different groups, because there's so much cross-border trade. It's such an integrated border. Stuff goes back and forth all the time. If you're building a car, they'll tell you that the parts often go back and forth 3 or 4 times before the car gets finished. So it's really important to maintain that relationship. It's important to maintain those diplomatic ties and to treat Americans with respect. I certainly hope it's bad for Canada if I'm selected again. It's not great for economic
Thank you
certainty.
very much. Sean, your answer, please.
Okay, foreign policy and Donald Trump. Now, what we're looking at right now is we're looking at, as President of the United States, he is a businessman. Okay? We don't have a businessman as a leader here in Canada. Okay? We're at a major disadvantage. Okay? So Donald Trump looks at everything from a business angle. Okay? That's why their economy is booming right now. Our dollar is 75 cents. Okay? Compared to the American dollar. Now, also, Justin Trudeau also promised that when the cannabis law was passed last year on October 17th, that we see a boom in the economy. Our dollar is staggering right now at 75 cents. So people call, whenever we get into Canadian politics, people call Donald Trump crazy. I can be crazy at times as well.
He's not just crazy, he's homophobic.
Thank you very much. Anita, you are up next, please.
First of all, I would just like to say that Chrystia Freeland has done an absolutely incredible job. I can tell you one thing about the Prime Minister, and he is not perfect. He is a good man, but what he does do is he takes the person who knows more and who is very talented and puts them forward. And you can see that with what he's been able to do with Chrystia Freeland on foreign affairs, Bill Morneau on the economy. He works as a team. And what we've been able to do on NAFTA is because we worked as a team, because we worked across party lines, we worked with the provinces. We do $2 billion a day in trade with the United States. This was an existential issue. And I went with the Foreign Affairs Committee to Mexico and Washington during this period. And the conservatives throughout that, including Aaron O'Toole, were saying that we had to give in, that we had to give in on cultural exemptions. We had to give in because we weren't going to be able to get a deal. And the fact is, we stuck to our guns. We stuck to our guns on progressive trade, and we got the deal.
Dave, you have 1 minute.
I agree that America and the United States are our greatest partners, our greatest allies, our greatest trade partners, and it's very unfortunate for them that they have Donald Trump as a leader. I truly do not believe he will be re-elected. I have many American friends, so I think that question is kind of a dead issue. However, I do believe that he is going to impact that America in many ways socially that are unfortunate in the long term. I truly believe, though, that we need to diversify our trade, and I think that the Green Party will not be a majority party, but I think we need to have a minority government with the Green Party in power so that we can actually influence decisions and diversify our trade with our partners in Europe. And China is not the solution, right? We need to look at the G7 nations and improve trade flow. And we need to improve trade flow across our own provinces, which is still to this day nobody has.
Thank you very much, Dave. The final answer on this question comes from Serge.
No matter who wins, we should have good relationships with the United States, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Trump or whoever. It's a country that's our neighbor. We trade with them. 90% of our trade is done with the States. It's a democracy. It's a similar culture. Like you cross to the States, sometimes you just don't feel the difference. There are people just like us. We cannot take our personal opinions and then just impose it in another country. What I think is that, I don't want to attack anyone, but I have to say Trudeau hasn't done a good job promoting our foreign policy. I think he was not promoting the best interests of Canada, but rather foreign, like UN interests, like international organization interests, and it wasn't the best for Canada. This is why we don't have the best trade agreements. We have to fix that. We have to put ourselves in a good position when we're strong.
Thank you, Serge.
bringing their oil from Saudi Arabia, and then once we're strong, we negotiate.
Thank you very much. Our next audience question reads as follows, and this is a long one, I will read it twice. There is an average of 70 domestic homicides in Canada every year. The majority of the victims are women, children, and especially Indigenous women. What policies will your party enact to reduce this number of homicides? Once again, there is an average of 70 domestic homicides in Canada every year. The majority of the victims are women, children, and especially Indigenous women. What policies will your party enact to reduce this number of homicides? First up will be Sean. You have 1 minute.
Yeah, this is really sad news. No one wants to hear bad news when it comes to violence and so on. Now, we have a policy in the Christian Heritage Party about gun control, okay? We don't want to take the rights away from responsible gun owners. And this is the key word, is being responsible. We don't want to see any machine guns and so on, but responsible gun owners, especially for farmers, also for self-defense. So now, we just had a commission that finished. It was called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I don't know what conclusion they came to. Now, I was telling people that if I was Prime Minister, I would call it the Truth and Healing Reconciliation Commission, because we need healing within our Native peoples. So I'm not sure. I think we'd have to work closely with the police department, people like Abdul here on the police department, to see how we
Thank you very much, Sean.
solutions.
Thank you. Abdul, you are up next.
Well, thank you very much. Any life lost, it is one too many, and that's why if you look at my platform, when we asked the question in terms of my priorities, I told you safety and security. I've been a police officer for 16 years, and I have been to too many violent incidents, whether it's domestic or otherwise. I told you earlier, I've had young people that I've known in this community that have lost their lives to homicide. The question about Indigenous people, we definitely have to support them. We have to provide them the support they need. It starts from the beginning. But most of the important thing that I would focus more on is, first of all, we need to educate young people. We need to educate communities at a very young age in terms of prevention. Second thing we have to do is we have to provide law enforcement the tools they need to do their work. And most important of all, we have to work together with all affected partners in order to get the job done. So that's a very important issue. It affects many people, and as a member of parliament, I definitely stand up for the Indigenous community.
Our government has implemented the first ever federal strategy on gender-based violence. And we have also included $100 million in that strategy for frontline organizations that are doing the hard lifting and the hard work on gender-based violence. We also included in Bill C-71 enhanced background checks for people who want to purchase guns. And this means, in the past, you could purchase a gun by only going back 5 years. If you had a domestic assault charge or you had a history of violence against your partner, you could buy a gun as long as it was more than 5 years ago. We changed that to your entire lifetime. We have also put $86 million to the RCMP and CBSA so that we can stop illegal guns from getting across the border. And with the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Inquiry, we put $50 million so that we can talk about violence and make sure that that never happens again, including looking at police standards. And we have issued a number of inquiries
Thank you very
on police
much,
standards
Anita.
and what went wrong.
Dave, can we have your answer, please?
Yes. Violence is truly one of the most complicated issues, but I think the bottom line for me is that accessibility to handguns is one of those black and white issues that I think we remove handguns from our country and make them illegal. Unfortunately, if that upsets the gun people, that to me is something that I'm willing to stand against, because you have to piss some of the people off some of the time to get things done. Hunters are a different world. I believe that subsistence hunting for Indigenous communities, people that are recreational hunters, are very responsible with long rifles, those types of things. And we do need to have stronger legislation. And then regarding the indigenous populations and violence, those are education issues, those are support, those are welfare issues. And most importantly, we need to actually fix the problems in our Aboriginal communities, in our indigenous communities. I cannot believe a government has not solved clean water in many generations.
Thank you very much, Dave. Sir, your answer, please.
In the UK, guns are illegal, yet there is a huge problem with stabbings. I think if somebody wants to kill, they're going to find a way. I'm not saying that guns are completely safe, but we have to fight the violence. I mean, we have to fight the culture of violence. We have to fight the gangs, we have to fight the drugs. It's being promoted by Hollywood, by movies, by music, and then we're trying to fight it. We create this, like the supply of it, and then we're trying to fight it with other means. I think we have to work, first of all, on promoting anti-violence culture. That's number one. And we should also give more power to municipalities, to local police stations, to local police officers, do their own work the way they think that's the most appropriate for them. One strategy could be less effective, let's say in Montreal, than in Vancouver. Let them decide. Small government.
Thank you very much, Serge. Angela, you have the final answer for this question.
Thank you very much. Just a point of information, they are not our Indigenous communities, they are nations. One of the first things that we need to do is implement the calls to justice from the National Inquiry for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. Women are vulnerable often because they are poor, because they do not have the resources at their disposal to be safe. Life is much safer when you can afford a nice house in a nice neighborhood, and it's much less safe when you have to take in renters and you don't necessarily know if you can trust them or not. So one of the biggest vulnerabilities for people is economic security. And the research shows that there is a pattern of escalating behavior in most of these cases. There's been stalking, there's been escalating threats and abuse, but our police force doesn't recognize it. They don't treat stalking as a serious issue because they haven't been educated on how that works. So we need to educate our police forces, our judicial system, and to address this issue.
This audience question asks that Anita answer first. So what we're going to do, Abdul was going to start, we're going to start with Anita, then go to Abdul, then the usual rotation from there. Here is the question. The Liberal Party failed to reform the electoral system as promised in the last campaign. What are your party's plans to reform our system? And I'll read that again. The Liberal Party failed to reform the electoral system as promised in the last campaign. What are your party's plans to reform our system? And as requested by the person writing this question, we'll have Anita answering first.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, this was one issue where I did abstain on the vote. And the reason that I did that is because I have my background, my professional background, is working around the world on democratic reform. And I am still a very strong proponent of electoral reform. I believe that what killed electoral reform was not cynicism, it was partisanship. It was the fact that in Parliament, all of the incentives are to not give the other party a win. And so what happened in the end, we gave up our majority on the committee, and what happened in the end was that there was a proposal put forward that the Conservatives and NDP agreed to, which was proportional representation and a referendum. And we couldn't agree with that. And I think if we had kept our majority and worked together with the incentives with the NDP, but given up our majority in the House, we've gone 2/3, we would have electoral reform today. One thing I did is I started an all-party democracy caucus, which Elizabeth May is the vice chair of, and we have members from all parties to change that incentive structure in Parliament that stops good ideas like electoral reform.
Abdul, your answer, please.
They got marijuana right though. They got the marijuana legislation passed. I'm just saying, but they promised to do the electoral reform. They didn't. So this tells you that they will promise anything to get elected. Just the other day, the Minister of Environment was asked about what's your plan to get us to 2050. The response was, we don't know, but let's get the election over, and we'll talk about that. So the fact of the matter is, they made a promise to Canadians, they did not keep their promise. And before I forget, let me mention one more time, there was a principal female cabinet minister, Jody Rabel Wilson. And do you know what? Do you know what? Do you know what happened? Okay, so, can you hold my time, please? Can you hold my time, please? Can you hold my time?
Sorry. The audience is asking.
You give me a minute? Did you give me time, please? Let's be straight up. If I'm gonna get them a minute, then you get them a minute, please. That's all I'm saying.
Abdul, you're
Give me
not
20
actually
seconds.
answering the question, and that's what they would like you to do.
I will go back and say what I said earlier. They made all kinds of promises. But I'll go back. When we talked about principled individuals, there was a person, and that person, we don't know what happened to them. Electoral reform, they're the ones who came up. It ain't broken, why fix it? They promised, we did not.
You're a peace officer, right? So you're... Listen, obey the law. I'm the law here. I'm giving you one more chance. The question was, what are your party's plans to reform our system?
I just said to you, if it's not broken, why fix it? We did not come up with electoral reform. They came up with it, and they made it an election promise to Canadians. They failed. It's just as simple as that. They make promises they don't fulfill. But what I said at the beginning is something they got right, and they decided to fulfill was the marijuana legislation. And they did.
We've heard this before. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop you here.
No problem.
Dave, if you...
Electoral reform, I believe, is a key societal issue. I think that we have a negative society because it starts from the top, and our first past the post system creates a winner takes all attitude, and when you have a winner takes all attitude, it's you lose, I win, I will bash you, right? So if we change the electoral system to first rank ballots, as well as the other one, I can't remember it off the top of my head. What we'll do is we'll reduce the actual idea that we have to bash our partners, because we will need their support to win our riding, right? Because first place and second place are just as important. And that is a society thing. And we need to change our society attitude. And that always starts with the top. And the top of our society, if we have civic behavior that is always win, lose, bash your opponent, then that is what we follow. That is what business follows. That is what our children follow. And that is why I think it's important.
Thank you very much, Dave. Sir, if you would please.
I would agree with Dave. The current system is just outdated. It's all about voting for conservatives to get rid of liberals, and voting for liberals to get rid of conservatives. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. And we're just like the States this way. Yeah, two-party system. We're fortunate enough to have other parties, but it's very hard to come up on top. And it's true, they've stated it, like you have to bash your opponents. Like, it's not a good system, it has to be updated, we have to work with each other. We have to agree to disagree, right and left, center and all of us. We're in it together. It's not about one side beating up on another side. No, it's not. It's about uniting Canada. That's it.
Yes.
Angela.
Yeah, so the NDP supports proportional representation. We came up with a very good proposal in the committee, but the Liberals didn't like it because they knew that it would get rid of their majority government. It would change the system where you're going back and forth between the Liberals and Conservatives, and it would force collaboration. And so they killed it very cynically. And our member of parliament here went around to, I've been told, has been going to run around to people in 2015 and promised them that it was the last time. They only had to vote for her once because she would bring in proportional representation. And not only did she let it go, she abstained rather than voting against it. So I think that you need a strong member of parliament fighting for you, who has the integrity and the strength of will to fight for what she believes in, and I think that that's me.
Sean? In 2011, Stephen Harper won a majority government with 39.6% of the vote. 4 years later, 2015, Justin Trudeau won a majority government with 39.6% of the vote. Okay? That's why he promised electoral reform. Rod Taylor, who ran here in 2015, he said to me right after the election, he said, Sean, of all the promises Justin Trudeau will break, I know he'll break a lot because he's liberal. I hope he doesn't break the one in electoral reform. Sure enough, on February 1st, 2017, he pulled the plug on electoral reform. No ranked ballot system, no proportional representation. Okay? So we're saying if 10% of the people in Canada voted for Christian heritage, we'd have 10% representation as members of parliament in the House of Commons. No trust, no responsibility.
Thank you very much. Our next question, and this one is directed to Anita to answer first. You just happen to be the first respondent anyway, so it works out perfectly. What will your government do to improve retirement security for all Canadians? What will your government do to improve retirement security for all Canadians? Anita, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I'll start with what we already did. We know that the poorest seniors are often single seniors. We increased the GIS supplement by 10% for single seniors. We also enhanced the Canada Pension Plan and made agreements with all the provinces so that the maximum under CPP is going up from $13,000 a year to $21,000 a year, because more Canadians than any other OECD country are retiring without private pensions. We need to invest in the Canada Pension Plan. What we're planning to do, and what I've heard from people, is the fear, what happens when I lose my spouse? What happens when I'm older, over 75? We're increasing OAS by 10% for those over 75, and we're increasing the Canada Pension Plan Survivors Benefit by 25%. And this is on top of the other things we've done, like investing in housing, and investing in the New Horizons for Seniors program, which is for social isolation of seniors, and making sure that seniors can retire in dignity. Thank you.
Dave, if you would.
Retirement is in my near future, hopefully, as well as many people, and the CPP is one of those key pieces. And I think that what the Green Party wants to do is increase that level. I also believe that there's a structural change happening in our society. Everybody's getting older, right? We can see it right here in this room today. And what we really need to do is focus on replacing those people leaving, because without that, there will be nobody to support our social infrastructure. I am a firm believer in immigration. I can tell you that that is the key to success for Canada. The Green Party has a comprehensive plan to enable immigration so that we can transfer workers so that they can actually come here and be credentialed quicker, and we no longer have doctors driving cabs or Ubers in the city.
Thank you very much.
I'll leave it at that.
Sir, your answer, please.
I looked up some statistics, and in Canada, 28% of single seniors live below the poverty line. 12.5% of couples, senior couples, live below the poverty line. The defined benefit plans are on decline. There was a bill passed, Bill C-27, that allows employers to cut on pensions. Also, we have cases such as Sears where the company went insolvent and that's it, the pension is just gone. So we have to protect those pensions. I believe that in the longer term, my generation does not have pensions because there is huge unfunded liabilities. We're basically paying for the pensions of today. And the answer to that is automation. We have to create value by embracing automation, and that will solve our issues with the pensions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Angela, your answer, please.
Except of course robots don't pay taxes, so how are we going to fund a social safety net? Immigration's a much bigger plan. So seniors have worked hard all their lives. They've paid into the system with the expectation that there would be support there when they retired. And we have not increased the GIS, the OAS, CPP, those pensions are not increasing at the same pace as costs are increasing for seniors. So too many seniors are trying to just make things, patch it together with housing costs that are extremely high, with prescription drug costs that are extremely high. I spoke to a senior today. She has drugs that cost her $500 twice a month, and it's not covered by her private plan. So for her, our universal pharmacare plan would save her $12,000 a year. That's huge. So our affordable housing plan, we plan to put more money in home care, in long-term care, and in caregivers.
Thank you very much, Angela. Next respondent is Sean.
Okay, this is our policy for the Christian Heritage Party. The Canada Pension Plan is inadequate for meeting the needs of Canada's seniors, even when combined with old age pension. The CHP would introduce what we call PISA, the Personal Income Security Amount account, to give Canadians control over their own employment and pension funds. Contributions would be made by both the employer and the employer to each employee's individual account, as is now done for the CPP. Old age security pension would remain in effect. Now, the CHP would initiate a personal income security account for every Canadian at the time they enter the workforce. And in Chile, where this has been implemented, workers have retired with substantial savings. So we have to be open-minded, look at countries like Chile and see how it operates, and perhaps invest in that program for Canada.
Thank you very much. And this question is Abdul.
So thank you. First of all, what we're going to do is we're going to go after companies that do not fulfill their pension obligations. And before I go on, also, I want to thank all the seniors who are here today, because it is because of you, the hard work that you've put over the years, that you've given me the candidate that I have today. Second of all, we're also going to make sure that all seniors can write off their home services that are provided by professionals or non-professional family members. We're also going to make sure that there will be no HST or GST on any of the essential foods or medications. So all this comes down to, I can go through a couple of other points that I have for seniors, but I think that the fact of the matter is I'll go back to a champion for seniors. I worked as a community police officer here in Parkwood Hills for several years, and a lot of the seniors that I've worked with have been seniors that have worked so hard over the years. And if I become your next member of parliament, I will make sure that I will never stand in the way of making sure that seniors get ahead. It's about them.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 9:05 Eastern Daylight Time. I'm quite happy to go until 9:30 if that is your interest as well. I see some people leaving, some people staying. Why don't we continue? We'll go for at least another couple of minutes, and I think the questions are still coming fast and furious. Is that okay with the guests? All our candidates are okay or not? Okay. Well, let's take another couple of questions. I get the sense that people are more or less ready to call it a night. We'll take two more questions, and then we'll have the candidates' closing statements after that. Right, if you leave quietly, please. Those of you who are standing, there are obviously lots of seats now available. Here's our next question from the audience. The current Employment Equity Act identifies 4 existing groups: women, people with disabilities, Indigenous people, and visible minorities. However, the focus on visible minorities has done little to improve the lives of Black Canadians. Given that Indigenous and Black Canadians share some similar history in Canada, would you support adding Black Canadians to the list of designated groups under the Employment Equity Act and enforcing the Act for all groups, including the employment numbers targets, with financial penalties for non-compliance? It's a long one. Let me read that again. The current Employment Equity Act identifies 4 existing groups: women, people with disabilities, Indigenous peoples, and visible minorities. However, the focus on visible minorities has done little to improve the lives of Black Canadians. Given that Indigenous and Black Canadians share some history in Canada, would you support adding Black Canadians to the list of designated groups under the Employment Equity Act and enforcing the Act for all groups, including the employment numbers targets, with financial penalties for non-compliance? I'm going to start the answers with Dave Stinney.
This is a good question because the Employment Equity Act just does not work as it is. You know, no matter what we do, adding Black Canadians to this would not solve the problem. I think we need a complete overhaul of the entire system, and we need to really examine how we can, you know, enable people who are visible minorities, Indigenous, women, visible, even, you know, disabled individuals to actually access work, right? And that is the heart of the problem, and it's a complicated one. And I don't mind saying that I don't fully understand it. I come from a place of privilege, right? I grew up in a fine family, but I think that it is a very important issue. I have many students who are amongst those groups, and you know, I know that they have difficulty finding even student employment, and those things need to be addressed because we all have biases, and we need to address those biases. And you know, I will honestly say that that is something I would support.
Thank you, Dave.
I strongly believe in equal opportunity, but I don't believe in equal outcome. I think that we have to provide education. Like, everyone should be able to access education. And we're fortunate enough to have universities which are fairly inexpensive if you compare that to the States. Well, it's more expensive than Europe, but cheaper than in the States. It depends on what you compare with. And at some point, I think it would be an amazing idea to have universities for free when we can afford it. I think everyone should be able to access the same kind of employment, no matter what their background is. And I believe it's the case for most of the for most of the cases in Canada. It's a great place of opportunity. We're just fortunate to be in this country already, with all of these resources, with all of this infrastructure, and I think that most Canadians get the best benefit out of it. We should not divide ourselves. We're one, and we work towards the same future. That's it.
Thank you.
So we know if we don't make an effort to have our workplaces represent the diversity of our communities, it doesn't happen. There are structural barriers in place. The research shows it. If you put out a resume with John Smith and a resume with Abdul Abdi, John Smith gets an interview and Abdul does not. So it is simply the fact that that discrimination is in place, and it affects the economic outcomes of people, it affects their well-being and their health long-term. And so we absolutely need to figure out how we can fix that. And education is part of the reason, because the Prime Minister has said about the blackface incident that he realizes he has blind spots. A lot of white Canadians have blind spots, and we don't realize the discrimination that our brothers and sisters face on a daily basis. The feeling that they don't belong, that they aren't part of equal partners.
Sean, your answer, please.
Okay, my wife is Filipino, so she falls under two categories, women and visible minorities. So I remember, just as a joke many years ago, we wrote an exam together at CMAR Hall at University of Ottawa. And after taking off the last box, visible minority, I said yes, because I looked around in a room full of 100 people, I was the only person with red hair and blue eyes, okay? So anyway, I don't think the answer is no, not to add blacks because they are part of the visible minority in Canada. So my answer would be no penalties, but add more incentives. Okay, that's my straight answer.
Thank you very much. Abdul.
Yeah, so tonight I can't wash my black face. It's going to be the way it is. What I'd like to say in regards to this is, first of all, I would be a liar and a hypocrite if I told you I would go against policies that would empower anybody who looks like me or has had issues that I've had in the past myself. But at the end of the day, too, we also want to give people opportunities. I'd rather see people achieve and thrive because of education, because of hard work, because of their background in terms of what they've done. I think what we need to do is empower people. If we empower people, they will excel. And for some companies, yeah, there are going to be companies out there that are not going to necessarily promote everybody. But I think it's very important for us to be able to understand that the best way to have people get ahead is by giving them opportunities, and that's what I support.
Thank you. I think we need to recognize that there is absolutely structural discrimination in our society and in the public service, and it is up to the federal government to lead the way on making sure that we don't have that kind of discrimination. One of the things we did was a pilot project on being blind hiring. I would like to expand that pilot project and make that something that is consistent throughout the public service. We also, I think the question was about the language around visible minority. I do think we need to update that language. Many people don't consider themselves in that category, and it also doesn't give us a full picture. So we need to discuss with public servants what kind of categories, racialized, black, what kind of categories they want. I also think we need to recognize that there's intersectionality, that many people face double or even triple discrimination. And that's why we need to make sure, for instance, people with disabilities who are also racialized are probably extra discriminated against. So that we have to make sure we're dealing with that. But the other thing is pay.
Thank you very much. Anita?
Thank you.
Here's the final answer for that question. Our final question of the evening. And the questioner asked that Abdul be the first to respond to that. So, the question reads as follows. All parties are long on promises that will cost additional millions of taxpayers' dollars. What expenditures will you decrease? I'll read that again. All parties are long on promises that will cost additional millions of taxpayers' dollars. What expenditures will you decrease? And let's start with Abdul.
First of all, we promise that in terms of the Conservative Party, we will increase every year 3% the social transfer to the provinces, including healthcare. That's one important thing. One of the things we're also going to do is to ensure that we will not have this giveaways to corporations, and we're going to make sure that we don't do that because Canadians trust us with their money, and we want to make sure we respect that. We don't have an unlimited credit card. I think I'd like to remind the audience as well, the debt right now, it's almost close to $700 billion. And it's important for everybody to recognize that it's costing us $2.2 billion per month for us to finance that debt. So for us, in terms of Conservatives, we want to do is we want to put you first. We want you to get ahead. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to lower your taxes. And we're going to make sure that we take the GST off of home heating. We're going to give you a home renovation tax credit. We're going to keep your neighborhood safe and secure. And that is the promise that we can keep to Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir would have started. So, sir, I'm going to go to you from there to answer that question, please.
We have an issue with high debt, as Mr. Abdi had mentioned before. We have 695 billion in debt, and that's around 19,000 for each Canadian. and we're going to have to pay this debt at some point, there's two ways, either to default on it, or second, to inflate your way out. Or third, which is very hard, to work your way in paying it. Basically, we put ourselves in a corner with high spending. What we propose at PPC to allow provinces, municipalities to tax, to transfer them, for example, GST, and so that they're able to tackle their local issues themselves, using them accordingly. Wherever they feel like is more appropriate, they allocate that money, and it goes lower in the ranks, in municipal and local governments. Basically, less government, more money in your pocket.
Thank you, Serge.
So we're gonna save you money by investing in things that prevent costs down the road. If you're, one thing that people often forget or maybe don't think about in terms of government finances is that it can be very similar to a business that's making investments. If a business could borrow to buy a piece of machinery and the cost of borrowing is lower than the expected return on investment, they're gonna borrow that money. Governments should do the same thing, but they should borrow the money and make smart investments that are gonna save us money in the long run. So if we have universal pharmacare, that means that people are taking the medicines that they need, they're not getting sicker, they're not ending up in the hospital with a heart attack. That means that we're building affordable housing and people have somewhere to live and they're not at risk for a whole host of other problems. So we're gonna use the money that is entrusted to us to make smart investments.
Thank you, Angela.
That will save us costs down the road. Thank you.
John, your answer, please.
Okay, we have a proposal for the Christian Heritage Party, and thanks for hanging around. We want to eliminate income tax. Yes. So we want to introduce what we call the fair tax. The fair tax, very briefly, okay? The CHP would replace the unfair federal income tax with a fair tax on purchases. This would be a flat rate applied to all purchases of finished products, okay? So the CHP would replace income tax with a fair tax, a national sales tax based not on what you earn, but on what you spend, okay? So the fair tax would simplify the tax system and eliminate all the complicated annual paperwork of individuals and businesses. So no tax return coming in, no money owed to the government every spring. So the fair tax is on what, not your income, on what you spend. Okay?
Thank you, Sean. We'll skip Abdul, you've answered already, and go to Anita.
Yes, thank you. There's two ways to balance the budget. One is to cut. So for instance, in your home, just don't fix the leaky roof and stop paying the heating bill and sell the furniture. The other way is to grow your income. Our government has chosen to do the latter, and it's working. Our income, our GDP, is growing faster than our spending. And that's the debt to GDP ratio. If that were ever to turn around, I would be the first person to say that we need to look at our spending. But what we're spending on are things that are investments in people. So when we're investing in youth mental health, when we're putting $6 billion into mental health, even in addition to the human side of it, the return on investment of that young person is 17 to 1 over their lifetime. When we invest in home care, you're keeping people out of hospitals, which cost $1,600 a night. And we too are going to put in universal pharmacare. These are investments that save money in the long term, and these are things that we can do to make sure that we keep growing our economy to be the fastest growing economy in the G7.
Thank you very much. And Dave, you have the last answer to the last question for tonight.
So I just want to say that the Green Party is the only party to fully release their platform and have it fully costed from a third-party perspective. So we know that our budget is actually accurate, and we are the only party besides the Conservative Party that promises to balance its budget within 5 years. So we have a very common sense approach. I often like to say that the Green Party is what the Liberal Party wishes to be. So from that point of view, I really believe that, you know, the common sense of the Green Party is something to consider. We're not some fly-by-night party. We've been around for ages, and we believe in financial transparency, and that is a key issue in this election because nobody else is providing that.
Thank you, Dave. To wrap up the evening, each candidate gets 90 seconds for a closing statement. Because we started with Serge for the previous question, Angela, you get the first crack at your closing statement. You have 90 seconds. Sure.
We've heard a lot of good ideas this evening, and I am the only person here who has a track record of taking good ideas, many of which I got through weekly coffee hours where I'm listening to constituents and turning them into real results. And one of the things that I think is wrong with politics is that too often ideas are shot down because they come from another party. I have a track record and I have proven that I've worked with other parties, whether it was on pay equity legislation, on an all-party women's caucus, or chairing the Democracy Caucus. I've reached across the aisle and I've tried to build consensus. Every committee report of every committee that I've chaired was a consensus report. And too often in politics, it's about finding some imperfection in your opponent and then amplifying that into character assassination. You can tell how a candidate will be when they're in Parliament by what they talk about. If it's all about attacks, that's what they'll do in Parliament. They'll be the ones in question period yelling across. I have never heckled. If it's about ideas, if it's about listening, and that is something that I have always done and I will continue to do, then that's the kind of MP that you'll see, and that's the kind of MP that you've seen in me. And we have a choice in this campaign. Austerity and cuts like Doug Ford, which is going to hurt people, or investing in Canadians and moving forward and building on environment, on seniors, on respect for our public service, on the home care and the universal farm care, and things that are important, and making sure that families are able to raise their children and be able to survive. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
October 21st is going to be a choice. It's going to be a choice between the last 4 years and the next 4 years. We know what the last 4 years have brought to Ottawa-West-Nepean. We know what the last 4 years have brought to Canada. We know that they said they're going to balance the budget, and the budget's still balancing themselves. We know that our debt is going out of control, and we need to bring balanced budgets. We want to make sure that tomorrow, when you go out there, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, which party is going to make you get ahead? The Conservative Party has a platform, and it's all about you, because you've been left behind for so long. We want to make sure that we lower your taxes. We want to make sure that we take the GST off home heating. We want to make sure that we make parental benefits tax-free. We want to make sure that we provide a safe and secure community for all. And that is the platform we're looking for the future. So when you start looking at yourselves and we look into the future, we can really look and say, we had 4 years that was a complete failure. And now they're going to promise you more and more. They have promised you cell phones cuts. They'll promise you everything they can to get elected. I don't want to do that. The Conservatives will not do that. We will be real to you, and we will represent to you respectfully and professionally. And if you elect me October 21st, you're going to get just that. Thank you.
Sean, your closing statement, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, every election is more important than the one before. We know that. You know where I stand and where we stand on these sensitive issues of life, family, and freedom. Thanks to Justin Trudeau and his Liberals in the last 4 years, Canada is in bad shape. We are on the verge of moral bankruptcy and financial bankruptcy. As a nation, we cannot afford another 4 years of Trudeau and his corrupt policies that are destroying Canada. He has to go. He's the most anti-Canadian and anti-Christian PM in our history. We need new leadership. A vote for your Christian Heritage candidate is a vote for life, a vote for change. I'm here to serve God, and God willing, I'm here to serve you as your next member of Parliament. It's about trust and responsibility. Vote Liberal and we all suffer the consequences. Take that leap of faith. Look for Sean on your ballot. Thank you.
Quite an act to follow. Okay. Every day when I'm knocking on doors in Ottawa-West-Nepean, I hear from people who are frustrated. They're frustrated that the change they thought they voted for in 2015 didn't happen. They had so much hope, and one promise after another, either their mailboxes were gone, or electoral reform didn't happen, or pay equity took 4 years and it still hasn't happened. So they're frustrated by the broken promises. And they're frustrated that this government seems to bend over backwards to help rich corporations, and they forget about you. They want a government that's going to be on their side. They want a member of Parliament who will work hard every day to deliver to the residents of Ottawa-West-Nepean what you need instead of what big corporations need. Only the NDP has a comprehensive plan to combat climate change, improve healthcare and childcare and other public services that you depend on, and make life affordable for ordinary Canadians. The tax cuts that the Conservatives are promising will only help the wealthy. You deserve an MP who's in your corner and on your side. A government with a comprehensive, fully costed, fully transparent plan instead of big promises and empty rhetoric. On October 21st, vote NDP for a government that's on your side.
Thank you very much. Sir, your statement, please.
The reason why I was so vocal about the free economy, about democracy, about capitalism, against too much spending, against socialism, is because I had lived through that. I had lived in the Soviet Union during the collapse. I remember the lineups where we had to wait for like hours to buy toilet paper. And it's funny how somebody with a social science degree knows more than myself about socialism and the issues about that. So I'm just here to present myself. I maybe did not give you as many details as I had written. I was a bit nervous. This is something new for me, but I can tell you, I was speaking from my heart. Some of this, like in today's politics, they have scripts. Often they're just fake. They're openly fake, and what they do is they want to make you fight. I saw so many people shouting, like screaming at each other, saying "shut up," one to another. Why? Why we can't be just one society? Every 4 years there's elections. People get angry. Candidates and politicians, they just step on people, and then see you. Once they get elected, see you in 4 years. That's it. They just forget it. We need some change. We need a big change, because this cannot continue the way it is. There is an establishment now. It's just very hard to get in, actually, because they have all the money. The system is made the way that it's very hard for a small party to get through. And this is a big issue. So guys, make your choice. The important thing is to vote and get involved in politics, all of you, and be nice to each other. Be kind.
Last word to you.
The most important thing that I want everybody to know about me is that I care passionately about our community, and I think a member of Parliament's first job is to care about their community and to actually follow up and follow all the issues and be involved at the local level. It's not about showing up at every barbecue, it's actually about working behind the scenes. It's about making contacts and establishing new patterns that can change things for the people that are living in our community. And that's what I want to do. It's something I'm very good at. I run a business, I'm a teacher. I know I've always been successful at what I do, and I'm really passionate about the grassroots changes that need to happen here. I'm also running because I truly believe in the Green Party platform. Elizabeth May is a wonderful leader. She has experience. She is the most experienced leader of them all. She has dedication. Look at her. She's still here today, right? Focusing on the issues that need to be focused on. She has integrity. And most of all, I really believe in Elizabeth May because she can laugh at herself. I've met her several times, She has a sense of humor. She is not full of her own pompous self, right? She is a real, authentic person, and she really does care about where our country is going. And so, honestly, I think that the Green Party is you know, it's the party of the future. I've watched student vote elections in all the schools across the country, and guess what? The Green Party tends to be the most dominant party. So it's the future. You might as well embrace it now.
Let's give a big round of applause for all the candidates. Now we're going to one of our organizers, Morley.
So I think we also owe a vote of applause to all the volunteers who helped tonight. Especially and to you who came out to listen. I hope this has helped you decide to get out and vote on October 21st, and help you decide how to help you in making your decisions. So thank you all for coming. If you want to see it again, in due course, it's been recorded. In due course, it's going to be going up on the internet. Not right away because there'll be a huge file.